The worst case scenario for Devin Haney is this final part I'm going to cover. The middle and time him. Right hand up the middle, then goes around the side, then goes up the middle. He has beautiful shot selection.
How can I die if I'm immortal? Monster in my eyes, I'm immoral. I ain't got no time to be cordial. Ripping up shit, I'm making decisions. I'm feeling fly and important.
Today, we are in the Sweet Science Lab. This is going to be a series in which I explore some of the intricacies of the sport and break down film for certain fights and stuff like that. So today, we got Lomachenko versus Devin Haney, which is going to be this Saturday, May the 20th. So I'm going to start with Devin Haney. We're going to get straight into it. Devin Haney versus Southpaws. He's going to be using his lead hand more as a probe and tap rather than a stiff jab. Like how when he was fighting Kambosos, everyone was talking about the jab. He has a great jab. Versus Southpaws, he's going to be more probing and tapping with the lead hand. And you'll see whenever he's doing that, that sets up his other shots from the backhand. Like the 2 to the body, or a 4 around the guard, or a 6 up the middle, which is basically a right hook or a right uppercut. So you see he's tapping and probing. By the way, the other thing with his lead hand is that his jab is more reactive rather than proactive in an open stance fight. So versus Kambosos, for example, his jab was always out there. He was controlling the fight with his jab. But in an open stance matchup versus a southpaw, it seems like he's using his jab sometimes more as a counter to what the southpaw is doing, rather as a setup to his own stuff. So I mentioned a positive or neutral habit of Devin using his lead hand in multiple ways and doing it different versus southpaws, and I think that can be a useful tool on the fight night. But here's something I think is actually going to spell a lot of trouble for him: the left hand and the left hook and the left overhand. JoJo couldn't miss those, and we're going to go through a short compilation of those landing just to kind of prove the point. Right. Unlike the rest of the left hands you just saw before, this one doesn't land clean, but it's more so Devin's reaction and what could have happened. That's why I'm highlighting this particular moment. He leans into it and his guard is out of position. He almost gets clipped on the chin. Quick thing I want to mention in this breakdown is power. There's a lot of big deals made about Devin Haney's power. I think Lomachenko is significantly a harder hitter than Devin Haney, but that doesn't mean that Devin Haney can't keep Loma off of him. I think Devin might have the type of power where he's not knocking people out and sleeping them, but he's such a sharp counterpuncher and he has such great reflexes that he can sting people with shots that discourage them from coming in. So that's just an important note about the power and how that's going to affect this fight. He might have enough power to keep Loma off of him. We'll have to see Saturday night. Another thing I want to mention is how he can confuse Loma early on if he switches up his guard and his stance. So for example, he can fight out of the high guard, he can fight out of the shell. His Philly shell's a little bit shaky, but and he can fight with his hands down. So you see him right here, he's fighting with his hands down. And one of the mistakes that people often do in comment sections, and they're like, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. It's like, well, boxers fight with their hands down for a reason. First of all, it gives them better opportunities and balance for upper body movement. But second of all, it gives them so many different angles for their punches. And I think that could really confuse Lomachenko and throw him off early on, because he spends most of the early round, most of like the first 3 rounds processing, trying to get information so he can start getting his time and the range down. But Devin can throw that off by switching his stances and boxing with his hands down and feinting and stuff like that. He can make Loma slow down early on and steal those rounds, or steal even more rounds. And this is why Jojo Diaz is a great analog, or a great analogy for how the Loma fight might play out. Loma is way better than Jojo, but stylistically, there's some similarities that we can bounce off of. Southpaw, small, and fights out of the high guard. And we'll see what Devin Haney does to the high guard of a southpaw, is he's able to pick that high guard apart. If you stand there in front of Devin Haney, he's gonna pick that high guard apart, and he'll throw a straight down the middle, and then a hook around the side, or he'll probe, and then land a 4 around the side. You know, he has different pathways. So if he sees an opening up the middle, he'll go up the middle, and or he'll play with this lead hand, this hand over here. He'll take that lead hand and then occupy the guard, bring the guard up the middle, which leaves openings around the sides. Or he can bring the guard out, doing the opposite, and then bring an uppercut up the middle. So it has a bunch of different variances he could do. But furthermore, he could take his shots and go down to the body. He could go straight to the body. He could go around the body. He could go up the middle to the body. Yeah, he's really good at breaking down and attacking that high guard. With Devin, I'm not so worried about his offense. I'm more worried about his defense. That's why I went through a big compilation of left hands landing on him, and we're going to talk more about that later. When I was breaking down his offense earlier, this is a perfect example of what I mean. Right hand up the middle, then goes around the side, then goes up the middle. He has beautiful shot selection. But that's also the perfect example of what I'm saying with his defense. He has trouble seeing that left hand from a southpaw. So this punch right here that you're going to see is going to be another important punch that I think Loma's going to take advantage of in this fight. So with the 2, which is the straight punch, the 4, which is the hook, and then this overhand. So watch how he sets up this overhand. He ducks low and then comes over top. And it lands clean. The reason why that overhand is so important is because Loma does something called level changing. I broke this down with Gervonta Davis, where he lowers the level of his upper body, and it makes it look like he's going down low because that's where his body is. But really, that allows for setup. That allows for setup shots over top, where it looks like he's going low, but then comes up high. And Loma does that a lot. Sometimes he doesn't even move offensively. Sometimes it's a defensive move as well. But I think that overhand is going to be a tool for Loma. Same idea right there. Same idea right here. Same idea right here. Same idea right here. So now we're going on to Lomachenko, and I'm going to break down some of the things I think is going to hurt him and help him in the fight with Devin based upon things I noticed in the Ortiz fight. So the first thing is, before we get into specific moments, I think the first 3 to 6 rounds, he's probably going to get kind of bullied and backed up and kind of pushed across the ring and things like that. Because if you look at the Ortiz fight, Loma was getting moved all around the ring by Ortiz and kind of controlled early on. I think it's going to be similar with Devin Haney. I think Devin Haney is going to be pushing him back a lot. Basically what happens is that he takes this foot and plants it deep outside over here. And this shoulder can't throw any punches, and this shoulder can't throw any punches, but Loma can. That's what makes the ankle dominant.
In the myth of
a 1-1-4 step in double jab with the backhand hook from Jojo Diaz.
Then you start applying the pressure.
Jojo Diaz was finding a lot of success with the 1-1-4 step in double jab backhand hook versus Devin Haney in that fight. So I think you're going to see some success with that combo from Lomachenko because he threw that a lot versus Ortiz. Here it is. Another part worth mentioning is the early on hesitation from Lomachenko and him being in front of Devin Haney, hopefully not too stationary for his sake. And I think he's going to eat a lot of body shots early on. I think Devin's going to attack that body, or at least he should attack that body early on, because Ortiz was finding a lot of success attacking that body and breaking that body down. I went through a whole compilation of left hands landing on Haney and surprising him. The reason why I did that is because Loma has one of the best straight left hands in boxing.
The jab hand busy, not to let Lomachenko
It catches people off guard all the time. And Haney has shown a susceptibility to that. And that was one of the main reasons why whenever Loma and Devin were matched up, I was like, ooh. Because Devin seems to struggle with that southpaw too. And Loma's an expert with that weapon. So now I'll go through a short compilation of a very important aspect of Loma's style. Him slipping and moving his upper body to set up his offense. It also provides defense because he's a moving target, but it sets up his offense too. So
has to contend with. Yeah, but can he sustain it? That's Dre. You know, we get the sparring partners, the amateurs in the ring trying to go downstairs to slow him down. Oh,
how much we would see with the reflexes, the response.
Actually like to see Loma spend more time inside like that.
These are real subtle movements. He's not moving his body by a lot, maybe like a few inches, but in the fight, they freeze up his opponent. So 2 important ways that he shuts down the probe or the jab from Devin Haney is what he did to Ortiz. Ortiz early on was controlling and bullying Loma with his lead hand and kind of leading him around the ring. But he did two things, two primary things, two weapons, a counter jab and a counter straight. We already looked at the straight earlier, so we'll go and give some examples of the jab. This is actually like a great example of adjustments in an exchange by Loma, like a short little exchange. Watch this.
Very well from his corner, which we are
So he gets caught off guard with the jab from Ortiz.
sitting right next to him.
And then the double jab kind of taps him. And so Ortiz puts that lead hand out there again. And then Loma's still getting pushed back by that lead hand. He guards up. And then he starts to counter jab over top of the jab. And that shuts down that jab for a little while. Look, he's getting controlled by the lead hand. And then look what he does. He tries to jab over top of that jab. And keep in mind, Devin Haney likes to jab from that lower position. Devin Haney fights out of a guard just like this. Look at the arms positioning. Devin Haney fights with his backhand up to the side of his head or on the other side of his head with his left hand lowered, and he jabs from that left hand lower position. But if he jabs and brings that arm down, that side of his face is now open to the counter jab. We're going to see a similar thing here with him using the counter jab to shut down Ortiz's jab.
But Ortiz still trying to pop that jab out.
Goes over top, lands, makes Ortiz reset. Level changes, like how I explained earlier with Jojo Diaz, when he level changes, it can also set up body shots. So here's an example of him level changing to set up a body shot.
Really impressive.
One thing Ortiz did really well that I think Haney should really focus on is working in that clinch. Don't just grab and hold. Control and punish Lomachenko in the clinch. Watch what Ortiz does here.
Even just clipping the arm.
He has a free arm and he's using it. He's uppercutting to the head and he's trying to land on the body. That's what Devin's going to do, because there is going to be some clinching in this fight. What happens if you don't get control on the inside versus Loma?
Have you seen Lomachenko?
He does shit like that. He'll get sneaky shots. Ortiz can't see that. That could have rocked him if Loma would have got more power behind that. And that's what you're supposed to do, right? This isn't dirty fighting. This is what you're supposed to do. On the inside, you're supposed to fight. That's why it's called inside fighting. So he has one arm tied up right here and one arm free. And he uses the other arm to bang Ortiz upside his head. You got to control Loma in the clinch. You got to. He finds dominant angles. But what's the way you counter those dominant angles? Well, you got to use your footwork too. Ortiz did a great job of pulling his back foot around so that his backside wasn't to Lomachenko. Let's see what he does here. He rotates and pivots. Same idea here. Watch this.
He's not throwing as much offense.
You could just see it moments ago with those.
And here's a perfect example of how you can build a successful offense against Loma using one of Loma's tricks.
It can be crucial.
Taking that angle around the backside and hitting him where he can't see. Before we get into like the last three parts of this breakdown, if you like this, make sure you like and subscribe. I normally don't do that, but I think it's important. So make sure you like and subscribe, and we're going to get back into it. The 2-1 combo from Loma was finding a lot of success. So the backhand cross into the jab. And we'll see some examples of that here.
Big left. Ortiz took it well.
Domination.
So you'll see it here again.
And there you see that right jab that we've been calling for. The lead left with the swivel right jab to come behind it. It's a very difficult punch.
One of the big points of contention is about Devin Haney's size and how he'll be able to use that to bully Lomachenko. And I definitely think that's a possibility. He can really impose his size. Here's some examples of Ortiz doing that on Loma. It's subtle stuff, but it's bullying, and it takes the stamina out of the smaller dude.
As he should.
Boom, gets underneath him, digs into his body. You could tell Loma's a little bit uncomfortable right there. And this is the perfect example of what I mean by bullying. Watch this. Boom. Shoves him halfway across the ring, almost the full way across the ring. He launches him across the ring with just a shoulder shrug. The worst case scenario for Devin Haney is this final part I'm going to cover. If he gets hurt or if he gets put into a defensive position where he's shelled up like this in the high guard, that is the worst case scenario, because Loma is a master at deconstructing and punishing somebody who uses the high guard. Watch what he does here. Taps, taps, taps. Around the side. And then look what he's going to do. He's going to come right up the middle and time him. He times him opening up, times the uppercut. If you look at Loma highlights, it's going to be against people that shell up in that high guard. The worst thing Devin can do is go into that high guard. The second worst thing he can do is fight out of that shell. And now at this point, we're going to get into the discussion about all of this. Or I guess since it's the Sweet Science Lab, we'll call it my hypothesis. I think Loma's going to win. I do think it's going to be a pretty close fight. Not that close. By the latter rounds, you're going to see Loma punishing Haney a lot. And it's in those later rounds like 9, 10, 11, 12 where Loma could get the stoppage. I don't see Loma stopping Devin early on because his reflexes is going to be too on point, and he's going to see a lot of the shots coming, even if he sees them too late and gets caught anyways, but he still sees the shots. I think later on in those like 8, 9, 10, like I said, those rounds and past them, Loma's going to start catching more and more heavy shots. He's going to catch him with shots in the clinch. He's going to catch him with overhands. And if Devin Haney starts shelling up, that's how you know the fight's getting close to being finished, because Loma's going to punish him for shelling up. I think I said in my notes, I said, early on, Devin controlling range with the lead hand and stabbing 2s to the body with 6s through the guard. So right hands and uppercuts. And like, what's important about this film study is that a lot of the stuff I'm describing is that a lot of things I'm describing are things that Devin is going to have to do versus what Loma already does. Right? Devin's going to have to make some significant stylistic changes in order to effectively beat Loma the way that he wants to. Loma is already capable of beating Devin very, very capably. Loma's already capable of beating Devin very effectively. And you can kind of tell because Jermaine Ortiz, in a lot of ways, is around the same level as Haney. In agility and speed and reflexes and footwork. I think Devin has a better jab and Devin has better defense, but Ortiz seems to be tougher and more durable. So that kind of cancels out. I think, by the way, I think Devin versus Jermaine Ortiz is an amazing fight. I think that's a great matchup. But and I don't know who will win that one. I'll probably say Devin just because he's more proven and I believe in him more. But as far as skill sets, Jermaine Ortiz is around the same level as Devin. But on the other hand, Jojo Ortiz, who's the closest analog Devin has to Loma, Jojo Ortiz is nowhere near the level of Loma. And Jojo Ortiz gave Devin a lot of trouble. Jermaine Ortiz gave Loma a lot of trouble, but Jermaine Ortiz had a few advantages. First of all, Loma was coming from the war, which is, I don't know how much that affected him, but I think the more important thing is that Jermaine Ortiz had a lot of sparring experience with Loma. So he knew how to counteract those angles and he knew a lot of stuff to expect. And so I think the combination of those two factors really made this fight. And of course, Loma's a smaller dude in a bigger division, facing younger, more primed out, physically primed out fighters. But yeah, I think Loma's faced plenty of fighters on Devin's level, but Devin has faced none on Loma's level. I think experience, I think southpaw technique is ultimately what's going to make Loma win this fight. It's going to be competitive, but Loma's going to win decisively. That's my prediction. UD or late stoppage, unanimous decision or late stoppage. Immortality Serum out.
Immortality Serum is the faction. Plenty entertainment if you asking. Game and commentary and reactions. There ain't no faking, neither is the capping. It just goes lights, camera, action.